Hello, third years. Okay, so today we're going to continue our work with fractions. We're going to talk about two different things with fractions. We're going to put fractions on a number line, and then we're going to dive a little bit deeper into equivalent fractions. All of us have done that work in the classroom with the fraction sets and actually physically finding equivalent fractions, but I'll cover that more here in just a minute. So, plotting fractions on a number line, we know that a fraction is one whole cut into equal pieces, and we're talking about a part of that fraction. So on a number line, we have 0 to 1 whole. And our fractions are going to be the equal pieces that we cut our one whole into on this number line. So if we were going to cut our number line into two pieces, the halfway point would be 1/2. Our one whole could also be 2/2. And we know that 2/2 is the same as one whole. All right. Now let's say we want to cut our number line into 4 pieces. So we'll draw 3 equal lines. So we got 1, I'll redraw that one, 2, 3. So as we can see here, our number line has been cut into 4 equal pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4. So each one of these tick marks is 1/4. So we're going to count by 1/4. Instead of counting by ones that we usually do on our number line, now we're going to count by our fractions. So we have 0, we have 1/4, we have 2/4, which we saw was the same as 1/2. We have 3/4, and then 1 whole, 4/4. Okay? So let's look at our My Math lesson that goes along with it. So it says, represent the fractions 1/3, 2/3, and 3/3 on a number line. Start at the left, place a 1/3 tile, we don't have the tiles. Above the number line, trace the tile, shade in the figure. Okay, so you can see here we have our number line. We have 0. This 1/3 tile, make 1/3. You put 2 down, you have 2/3. 3 down makes 3/3. 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. All together is 1 whole. Okay? My dog is whining at me because I've been recording lessons all day and not paying attention to him, so he would like to be in my lap right about now. All right. So it says place the second, third tile above the number line next to the shaded figure. Trace the tiles, shade in the figures. All right. So it says, what fraction do the first 2 shaded areas represent? So this represents 1/3. This represents another 1/3. So all together, this would represent 2/3. Right? What fraction do all 3 shaded areas represent? If we shade all 3, we have 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, 3/3, which we know equals 1 whole. Okay? So 1/3 is 1 part, 2/3 is 2 parts, 3/3 is 3 parts. Okay? There's 3 total parts of the whole if we're cutting it into thirds. Just like when we cut it into fourths, there would be 4 parts. All right, moving on. So here we have a number line again, cut into thirds. It says, one endpoint of the fraction tile that represents 1/3 is at 0. Make a tick mark on the number line to show the other endpoint. Label the fraction. So each one of these is 1/3. So from 0 to 1 part of that, that's 1 part of it. We could even count it like this. This would be 2 parts of it, and they did the 3 parts of it, out of our total 3 parts. 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. Okay? It says, where would you place the tick mark for the fraction 3/3? Oh, yeah, we were supposed to put the tick marks. So our tick mark would go right here where that meets the, and our second tick mark would go here. Where would we put the tick mark for 3/3? Right here at the end. Ta-da! All right. Sam is making a number line and wants to mark a point for 3/4 on the number line. Into how many parts would he divide the number line? So he's going to have to divide that into, if he wants to make it thirds, we're going to have to divide it into 3 parts. If he wants to do fourths, he's going to have to divide it into 4 parts to find 3/4. Just like we did here. Our number line is divided into 4 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there's our 3/4. 1, 2, 3 out of 4. Ta-da! Okay. Suppose Lisa makes a number line from 0 to 1. Then she divides the number line into 8 parts. What 7 fractions will she place at each tick mark between 0 and 1? Well, we can do that. We can take our number line. From 0 to 1, and we can divide it into 8 parts. So I'm going to do my best to do it. Usually I like to, when I'm making a number line, I like to make my halfway point. And since this is 8s, I can mark it halfway in between these 2 parts. So now we're at 4ths. So now I need to put each of these parts, cut them into half. Bump, 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 bump. So now we should have 8 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 parts. So now we can label 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, and our last tick mark, 1 whole, is what, everyone? 8/8. Ta-da, ta-da. All right. So you have a couple sheets for follow-up work for this part. I've uploaded the PDF. I know that some of us don't have printers. Do your best to answer on a separate sheet of paper, and you can take a picture, upload that way, or you're possibly able to modify it on Seesaw. Whichever way is easiest, do your best. We're doing what we can here. Even if you want to, make your own work of drawing a number line and, making your own fraction. Like if you want to find 3/5, show what that looks like on the number line. All right. So next we're going to go into equivalent fractions. This is not a new concept for us. So we can see, fractions that name the same part of the whole are equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions are equal and represent the same size. So over here we see this 1 represents our 1 whole. We have halves, 1/2, 2/2. So finding equivalent fraction for 1/2. We have fourths here, so 1 2/4 is the same as 1/2. Is this coming back to us? And if we have 8s, 1 2 3 4 8s is the same thing as 2/4 and the same thing as 1/2. We remember if we were to do all of our even numbers, we're going to be able to make equivalent fractions. So 6. I'm going to do my best to try to 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I'm a little off. Should look like that. All right. So if we were to have 6, 1, 2, 3 6 is the same as 1/2 as well. Those are all equivalent fractions. And we remember 5/10, 6/12, we could keep going. So example 1, Noah has 1/2 of a fruit pizza. How could Noah cut the pizza into smaller equal-sized pieces and still have half the whole pizza? Use 1/4 fraction tile to equal the length of the 1/4 fraction tile to equal the length. So how many 1/4 tiles are there? There are 2 of the fourths. So 1/2 equals 2/4. They are equivalent. Yes, they are. They are equivalent fractions. They represent the same part of one whole. Part 2, Noah could cut half of the pizza into even smaller equal-sized pieces. He's going to cut it into eighths. Use 1/8 fraction tiles to equal the length of 1/2. How many eighth tiles are there? 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 tiles. So 1/2 equals 2/4 equals 4/8. They are what, everyone? Equivalent fractions. Yay! Half of the fruit pizza is the same as 2/4 or 4/8, and like I just said, 5/10, 6/12. We could keep going. You could go to infinity making equivalent fractions for 1/2 and other fractions as well. But let's go on to example 2. It says, Kwan's bookshelf has 3 shelves. Only one of the shelves has books. Kwan says 1/3 of the shelves have books. His mom says 2/6 of the shelves have books. Are they both correct? Well, let's find out. So here's our one whole. Here is our one whole split into 3 parts, and 1/3 of that is shaded. And then here is our one whole split into 6 parts with 2 of those pieces shaded. And lo and behold, ta-da-da-da! If you can see how beautifully it lines up, yes, 2/6 is the same as 1/3. They are equivalent. Another way is to use our number lines. Just like we talked about, we have our number line split into 3 parts. There is our tick mark at 1/3. Then we draw a number line that we split into 6 parts. There's the tick mark at 2/6, and they're right on top of the other. So 1/3 of one whole shares the same point on the number line as 2/6. They are both correct. 1/3 equals 2/6, so they are what? Equivalent fractions! Oh my gosh. We so have this down. All right. We'll do this one for guided practice, and then you'll have a worksheet to complete on your own that's doing the same thing. Complete the number sentence with an equivalent fraction. 1/2 equals what? 1/2/4. Bada bing, bada boom. All right. So that is our lesson today on fractions on a number line and equivalent fractions. Again, if you're getting frustrated, with the documents, just do your best to copy it on a sheet of paper, draw your own number line, do your best to draw your fractions. I know it's difficult if you don't have, like you see me, I do my best to draw, but I'm not, and maybe you can even jog your memory and remember from that big work that you did with our fraction set in the classroom and kind of remember what some of these equivalent fractions are, and challenge yourself and see about the patterns. So we know when we're finding equivalent fractions of 1/2, we're always going to, our equivalent fractions will always be even numbers, okay? We can't find 1/2 of fifths because we can't, a whole that's cut into 5 pieces, we can't half that. But we can cut it into 6 pieces, and 1/2 of 6 is 3. We can divide 6 by 2. We can't divide 5 by 2. We can, but we don't get a whole answer. Okay, so another way to look at this as equivalent fractions is we're multiplying, we're getting bigger. So if we looked at So this 1/2, we know 1/2 equals 2/4 equals 4/8. Well, that 1/2 times 2, 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4. Or if we multiply them both by 4, 1 times 4 is 4, 2 times 4 is 8. Same thing if we do our thirds. If we have 1/3 and we want to find an equivalent fraction, we can multiply both our numerator and our denominator by 2. 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 2 is 6. If we want to find an equivalent fraction of it, multiply them both by 5. We can do that. 1 times 5 is 5. 3 times 5 is 15. Those are all equivalent fractions. So here's your multiplication if you would like. And if you want to make your own list of equivalent fractions, you can do that. I'm even going to add the equivalent fraction sheet. And this time, your work, you don't have to do it as follow-up work to this lesson. It can just be kind of like practice throughout the week if you want a little something extra. See if you can find the equivalent fractions without the fraction set. Since you guys are third years, you don't need it anymore. All right, use your multiplication. Yay! All right, so that's sorry, my nose is really itchy today. That's our lesson on equivalent fractions and fractions on a number line. I will also assign some stuff in IXL so you can practice. Have fun, and I'll see you later.